Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Reinvention Show. This is the place where we come together to explore how do we live in today's uncertain, unpredictable, volatile world, and how do we not just survive the disruption, but actually thrive in it? How do we shift the question from let's hold on and survive until things come down to how do we thrive in chaos? How do we turn uncertainty, complexity, disruption that we're feeling today into opportunity, into bliss, into a life that is actually enjoyable? And I'm so happy that you are joining us, whether you are on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn right now. We're excited you're here because, boy, do I have a treat for you today. It's a personal honor. It's an amazing guest. And as I'm warming you up, let me know in the chat where you're joining us from. This is always an international community. I'm back in US. My wonderful guest today will be from UK. I see Michael is here from Düsseldorf in Germany. Welcome, Michael. Happy to see you. Let me know in the comments where you're joining us from so that we can celebrate this connection. Tatiana is here from Slovakia. So happy to see you, Tatiana. Tatiana and I worked together for many years at a beautiful construction material company, which is now of insulation. So welcome. Somebody is in Cape Town. If you want us to see your name, above the stream, you will see a message that gives you a link. You need to click on a link and give StreamYard permission to show me your name, and then I will know who is commenting. Welcome. I'm excited to have you all. And I'm excited to see more of you joining. Anna is here, our beautiful certified reinvention practitioner from Portugal in Lisbon. Anna, welcome. I'm so excited to hear about your play and reinvent venture, which combines, of course, Lego play and our reinvention method. This is beautiful. I see Netherlands in the house. Welcome. Angela from Italy in the house. Welcome. Excited to see all of you. Happy to have you. So, today we're talking about power, and oh my God, is it going to be a treat for you? Why? Because one of the most amazing, and I truly want to say it before he shows up on camera because he won't let me, one of the most amazing thinkers in the field of leadership and strategy, a person who made an incredible difference in my life. A lot of my big reinvention projects in the real world, including all the work done in mining and metals, came because of Jonathan. One of the most important educators in my life, because I had the luxury of teaching together with both Jonathan and Henry Mintzberg, was Jonathan. And of course, one of the most important thinkers. If you have not read the classic, The Five Minds of the Manager, Harvard Business Review, Google it now and read it now. You have to know, this is classic. This is like early 2000s. You have to read it. So my great honor to welcome to the Reinvention Show, Jonathan Gosling. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you very much, Nadia. It's such a delight to be here and talk to you. Really exciting.
Good. It's a treat for me. It's an absolute treat for me. And I was through the moon. I told this to you that when you suggested the topic of power, for me, it was like, we have to talk about power. We must reinvent our relationship with the concept of power. We have to invest in understanding what power is, and we have to start making power a friend. And let me just set my context here. What I'm seeing in real organizational life and also personal life when it comes to power is this dynamic that from history, and of course, the beautiful authors such as the Prince by Machiavelli, and before that, the classics in the Roman Empire and others have shaped our concept of power in a way that power is something dirty, something that forces you to make a deal with devil and compromise on your soul and your heart and all you believe in. And it's something that people who have this inner core say, I'm not going to touch that. And as a result, everyone who plays in power, or almost everyone who plays this power, are probably people who should be far away from the power. And my agenda is to say, hey, time to reinvent our relationship with power, time to start treating political environment as a normal part of life. Every time we have two people in one room, every time my husband and I are deciding what's for dinner, that's a political conversation. So you cannot avoid it. So why not have an intelligent relationship with that? So with that, I'm super excited that you want to talk about power. Start us off. What is power? What is power for you?
Well, let me tell you how I first asked this question for myself. I've been teaching a lot, theories about power, but it really came home to me once. I was visiting a friend in Australia, and he was very ill, and it was clear going to be the last time that we'd meet. And he took this opportunity to speak truth to me and ask me difficult questions, and I was ready to hear them. And I had said to him, he asked me what I was doing, and I said, I'm thinking of taking on this new job. I'm quite excited by the position and the opportunities, the challenges, the great things I can do. And he listened to me for a while, and then he said, why do you want to do that? And I thought, well, I can further my purpose. I can help all those people. I can change the world and all those things. And he just sort of looked at me and said not much more. And when I went away from that meeting, I was walking through Melbourne, and I started thinking about his question. Why do I want to do this? And what came to me for the first time, it's an obvious question afterwards, is what is the pleasure that I expect to have from this? What actually inside me feels exciting? And where's the libido in this? Where's my desire and what is feeding it? And then what kind of desire is it? And so that got me thinking about power. And actually, in that particular instance, it caused me to not take up that job, because I realized, this is an old pleasure. The pleasure of kind of taking on a project and running it and having a sort of hierarchical position at the top of a pyramid is something I know I can do. I'm familiar with it, but actually, I've done enough of that. It's a kind of nostalgia. It became then a nostalgia. Although I was thinking about it as an opportunity for the future, the feeling was a nostalgic one. So I thought, no, how else might I find pleasure in a different way in power? Then that got me thinking. Now, then I started talking to a lot of other people, and drew out their stories, and that. So now I think I can articulate a number of different kinds of pleasures of power.
I love that.
Yeah.
Let me before I double click on that, let's just clarify why pleasure is the criteria. Because, and let me say a few words about different cultures. We have people from all over the world here. Texas just joined us. Somebody else is here that I can see. So we have different cultures, and there are many cultures, and also it's not necessarily geographic cultures. There are organizational cultures. There are Protestant ethic cultures, and there are many other cultures where pleasure is not exactly the top of a priority that you should associate yourself with. It's not something that you should proudly scream around. You should work hard, and you should suppress, and you should fall in line, and you should be humble, and you should I don't know, long list of things that you owe to your family, society, whoever else. And pleasure is usually something, again, very selfish or dirty, and something we shouldn't talk about. You're not supposed to have pleasure in a business meeting. What are you talking about? So can you tell me why pleasure is even a criteria that we should consider when we're deciding to do or not to do?
So I think that, the capacity to do what you should do successfully depends on your ability to generate and find pleasure in that. So it may be a pleasure in filial piety. It may be a pleasure in belonging, a pleasure in duty. It's something, and I think most of us who take on doing, as it were, things we feel we have to do, we ought to do, as you say, use the term should, are probably conscious of the ability inside, like the little internal conversations we have ourselves, saying, how do I make this really engaging? Can I get myself into that?
Mhm.
And usually we can, if we're successful, it's probably because we've been able to generate and find the pleasure in it.
Mhm.
But it's also why, after a time one feels a bit sort of burnt out and tired of some things. Time, it's not time to move on because it becomes, those pleasures become a bit worn out.
Mhm.
So time to look at what other capacity you have in yourself to really feel enlivened and engaged and excited, turned on by other
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
So that brings us back to power. Why power should be something we enjoy or get pleasure from?
So let me step back a bit on that. The first thing is that power that in organization, what David Corpusson, who's a great organization scholar, says that power is to organization as oxygen is to breathing.
Huh.
It's a great quote, really. So yeah, breathe. You enjoy the breathing. Whether you enjoy it or not, you need the oxygen. There it is. And if you become mindful of your breathing, it actually becomes more intriguing and interesting and engaging, and you become more able to control your bodily responses to things,
Yeah.
and including pain as well as energy and energetic exercise and things. And I think it's a great metaphor because I think it's the same about power. I think as it's there anyway. That's how the process of organization happens. It's the exercise of power. So yeah, breathe it, taste it, become sensitive to it, become a connoisseur of it. Doesn't mean you have to go crazy with it, but become a connoisseur of it. And then the other sort of hint that this is, really quite a fun place to go came from I wrote a book about Napoleon Bonaparte a few years
I
ago.
remember you have a
And,
series. By the way, those of you who are not familiar with Jonathan Gosling work, open Amazon, Google his name, and get his books. It's as simple as that. It's amazing studies on some of the most important leadership figures in our life. So yes, Napoleon.
Thank you. Well, Napoleon wrote this lovely letter. There was a journalist who became a sort of confidant of him, and he wrote this lovely letter. This guy called Roederer, and so part way through the letter, he says to him this. He says, "My friend, the thing is this: my mistress is power, and I could not bear anyone else to take her from me."
Mhm.
He knew this about himself. He was very sort of self-aware in that way. And I thought that's another interesting way to think about it. Okay, oxygen is one thing, but as your lover,
Mhm.
mm,
That's
and
big.
yeah, that's quite something.
And
So,
to know, right? To be to own that, to
mm,
know that this is what gives me the energy to make things happen, occasionally taking me on the wrong path, as we know with Napoleon, and occasionally perhaps other players in the game also influenced where I went with power. But um, to just be self aware, that's absolutely beautiful. There's something in that metaphor and oxygen. So let me repeat that quote if I got it right. Oxygen in organizations, oh, sorry, power in organizations is what oxygen is to breathing.
yeah,
There's a few things that I want to highlight in that. Number one is oxygen is not good or bad. It's not neutral. There is no negative or positive there. There's no power is dirty or power is beautiful or power is this about. It's a necessity if you want the body to exist, because your body, this is the first thing that will kill you faster than anything else, is absence of oxygen. Number two, if we think about that, you can be in one organization where air is like the best and the cleanest of Alps. And you can be an organization where the air is the kind of dirtiest, most toxic smoke. Is there still oxygen there? Yeah.
mm,
It's just a very different story. And therefore, the longevity and the health of your body will be different if you
yeah,
are breathing in power on top of a clean mountain versus you're in the middle of a toxic city, for example. So there is a beauty there in the sense of it's neutral by design, but you do have one choice on what you inhale and what you exhale, and you have a choice on what kind of oxygen will be not just mine but our collective, because nobody owns oxygen. So there's so many layers that I'm seeing in that metaphor. How do we what control do we have over that oxygen? What can we do to make sure that the air we breathe in terms of power is something that is good for ourselves and that it's good for the environment in which we are?
Well, this is why I think it's important to think about your own relationship to power, because I think it becomes energizing and life-giving when it's in tune with the kinds of pleasures that you are suited, as it were, predisposed to enjoy, because we all enjoy different things. We have different, we get our kicks in different ways, and it's good to know what, but also that changes over time, over a course of a career. So for example, this is a gross generalization, but I think that particularly early in a career, uh, establishing one's sense of self, one's identity, one's self-confidence, and self-esteem, particularly in a work situation, in a sort of job or in a role working with others, that's really important. Who am I in this? Do people recognize me? Do I know? Can I have some agency in this? What you get from that is what I call the pleasures of identity. So the affirmation, the self-esteem, just the recognition from other people, and gradually the sense that, oh, I can influence things. I can have that. So the pleasures of identity shift over time to say, you know what, I want to actually run the project, or I want to shape the agenda, or I want to reinvent the way things are done here. These are really exercising the pleasures of influence. And often when you get really into the pleasure of influence, the concern about identity sort of shifts away, because you say, I don't mind if I don't get recognized. The main thing is the agenda goes that way.
Yes.
Or these things happen.
Yes.
I think seldom the identity goes completely, but it's not the dominant one with a bit more experience. But after a while, at least my experience was, and many of the people I've interviewed, is that I kind of know I can shape an agenda. I know I can run things, and as in the example I gave before, the sort of the influencing on itself is sort of almost become too easy. It's not so exciting anymore.
Yes.
But what becomes more interesting is to be like in the mix of power. Where policy is shaped, where the discourse is set up, where sort of values are adjusted, challenged. So, and there it's not really, you never quite know how big your own influence is, but you're in the mix. You're in the, I call those the pleasures of interaction and of being caught up, interacting with in a field of sort of power and influence, those things. So I sort of set it out that there's this sort of developmental kinds of pleasures, from identity to influence to interaction. I don't think it applies universally, but it's a starting point.
I love that. So let me highlight this in real life again. The way I would understand it, the pleasures of identity are mainly about leading self. This is about who I am, and some of it is formalized power, my title, my list of responsibilities, and which committees I am on, or which teams I'm put on, and where do I have the rights, and so on. Some of that is still informal, but it's mainly about I am the main object of shaping. The power comes, and the essence of my work is about me. Then it comes to leading others, which is the pleasures of influence, where I may not be the CEO, but I can come in a meeting and ask you questions that will change the course of the company, even though I have no title whatsoever in this company. And no formal, but I have influence. And then there is leading through others when you are not touching them at all. So the leading self, leading others, and leading through others. The pleasure of identity, the pleasure of influence, and pleasure of interaction, where you're not really physically able to move this meeting, but you have this more non-linear, more more systemic. You are shaping the environment to be able to touch. And here it's a question is what gives you that pleasure, the joy, the kicks, the energy. Where are you right now? And the second question I want to ask our audience is, are you stuck in a place where you probably already outgrew? Because I see a lot of people sitting with power, the idea of power, that it's the first one, yeah, the pleasures of identity, and they need another title and another diploma and another something to tell them that they have the right to shape the world. And the reality is, you don't need any of that. What you need is to shift here and move on to the pleasure of influence or some other format of relationship with power. Do you see people getting stuck with their sense of perception of power? And how do we get unstuck and become the friend of power and start being in a relationship with power that is healthy for us and for others?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question. I think that I've sort of coined and determined a new verb. Let's say powering. So, so we talked about organizing, and you said no. We're talking about managing or leading. And, it's not entirely clear what they are, but we sort of know more or less. So just think about powering. So how am I going to do what's? So I might say, Nadia, what is your powering style? What's your preferred ways of powering, of doing that stuff? And we might ask other people, and I guess our listeners here and might think for themselves, how do you do powering? Like, how do you do walking? Sometimes you do full on powering, and other times you're a bit more relaxed and chilled about it. Sometimes you're enjoying other people doing it. So I don't think we need to be so hung up with that. But I think it's a good verb to have in our vocabulary to help us think about that.
I love that. That's a beautiful question. How are you powering? And what format of style of powering fits you right now? Because I know one of the way I power from time to time is uncertainty. I create uncertainty for others, and that opens up a space and the influence. So, for example, in our courses, in the courses of Reinvention Academy, early on, I create quite deliberately. I create high sense of uncertainty. That's my form of powering, because a lot of things move when people are in the middle of uncertainty and they're forced to make decisions with incomplete information and with no help of anybody else. And sometimes it's the other way around. It's extremely high touch and very directive form of powering that I engage in, and many other formats. So I love that powering. Jonathan, how are you powering today?
Well, I think what I'm mobilizing today is it kind of powering around sort of agenda setting, framing. So I'm conjuring up in my mind a way of seeing the world, and I'm trying to draw you and others into that way of seeing it. So in a way, what I'm generating is my narcissistic capabilities, my conviction that the way I see things in my mind is the way the world should be seen. And we know that narcissistic leaders really go over the top with that, and that's one area of kind of toxic power and toxic leadership, is an overdose in narcissism. But I think we all need a certain amount of narcissism, and probably people who remain anxious about the narcissism need the narcissistic defenses all the time, or always keen on the identity question. And I know I'm like that. For me, my sort of, I suppose, when I'm anxious and uncertain, I go back to those questions of identity. So I want to be seen and recognized. So it's lovely to be on the TV. That gives me, reaffirms a lot for me. But I am trying to generate some of my my other sort of more constructive powering styles.
You are actually modeling for people right now a lot of vulnerability and self-awareness in terms of we can pretend that power doesn't exist, or we can start actually having a relationship with power. We can pretend that pleasure is bad, or we can actually admit that we have zero control on what we want. Try ever control what you want. You can give yourself 200 rational reasons that you should have a cake or carrot, but you want what you want.
Yeah.
Either you want a cake or you want a carrot, but you want what you have zero control on what you want. It comes from I don't know where, but it doesn't come from your rational mind. So understanding that pleasure is a very important signal and story. You're also reinventing the questions of what is narcissism and what is power in organizations for people around you. So there's a lot of reactions here in the community. So are you stuck in a place you already outgrew is a question that is resonating for people. Somebody says nonlinear systemic influence is perhaps navigated with implicit embodied knowing, probing more than explicit expert knowledge. Yes, and Jonathan, you just said it's probably good with a more implicit and less expert knowledge, but we sometimes wake up and like, I want to be seen as an expert. I know it's not necessary, but I have that need and I want to figure out how to do that. You said something that is important: toxic power. How do we know that power turned toxic?
Yeah, well, I think you conjured up the brilliant metaphor. It's kind of like the pollution in the air. I know I'm breathing dirty air here,
Yeah.
and I think we usually know somewhere intuitively if power is abusive, but not always. Because we become accustomed to it. We become used to those kinds of. We think the whole world is made up of that. Actually, I've got a painting. I'm not sure which way I should move to show it here. Up here on the wall. I don't know if I'm not sure if you can see. Maybe I'll just bring it closer so people can see.
It's beautiful hand right there. Yeah.
Which I think you see is our experiences in organisations is quite often quite a lot like that. That we're constantly trying to sort of balance our survive in amidst there's some great machinations going on by them just trying to survive in it, and everyone trying to kind of balance in it. And we seem to think, well, this is normal. This is just what organizational life is like, and to some extent, I suppose it is. But that becomes, more than unsettling. It becomes damaging sometimes, and that I think is partly to do with the natures of the leaders and the dynamics amongst them, and partly to do often with the circumstances they're in, but also with our own responses to it. And what does it call? What sort of inner early experiences does it summon up for us? And it's a gross generalization, but I think when faced with those kinds of situations, we have all developed a kind of style of defense. How do I cope with an abusive or dangerous, potentially traumatic situation? And for some of us, like myself included, they are narcissistic defenses. There's put myself at the center of the world. It's all about me, and we get driven back into those defenses, and that causes us to kind of want to deny the outside reality and just focus on ourselves. But I think some others have go to a sort of control place, and they say I want to get control of all of this. They're kind of obsessive defense, and sometimes you try to control the world out there and make it clean, at least in one's own space.
Yes.
And when it becomes impossible to do that, you're really left with very little option but to go. But and then there's another sort of whole world of defenses which are around sort of dependency, kind of the wish that somehow some external source will make it okay. So we see it a lot in relation to climate change and things, where people say, oh no, there's some new technology is going to make hydrogen will make it all right, or we'll be okay on Mars, or there'll be something somewhere else that will sweep the problems away. So it's often technology, or it's I don't know, so some
government, my parents, my
Yeah,
boss, somebody else will fix it magically.
exactly. And we long to be dependent on them, and that's why, if we could think, well, look, the system should be right, or our bosses will be right, or the board will fix it, and over time, one gets, I suppose you go through three stages of hope and disappointment
Mm.
in those things, because it's normal.
Yeah, love that. Love that. So, what I'm getting from this, guys, number one, trust your gut. Most of us know if power turned toxic, if the air is becoming dangerous, most of us, if we ask ourselves honestly enough and often enough, will be able to put the red flag and say, hey, it used to be clean air, is no longer healthy. That's number one. Number two is to explore the last time you were in a difficult, unhealthy power relationship. I don't know, your boss was behaving in a way that you are becoming unproductive and shrinking, and your team is becoming less than it can be consistently. Your political situation in your city, your town, your country, wherever else is not allowing the system to be the healthiest version of yourself. Every time you're in the middle of a situation where you are seeing that power is turning toxic, the first thing is to become aware what's our standard responses. What are we reverting to? I know I come from a particular childhood where my standard response was always smiling and trying to make things nice, trying to bridge the gaps and find compromises, even when compromise should never be actually accepted. There are many times in a system where compromise is not possible, and it's also extremely dangerous. I think climate change is a place where we're seeing that it should not be a place where we do a lot of compromises. Other really life sustaining places where compromise is just simply not good enough. So, are we aware of our standard responses? And do we see a library of responses? The moment we understand there's more than one to toxicity and power, we become empowered. We have options. We know we have variations. We can become much more creative with our response to toxicity, including an option of getting out and moving on to a less toxic system or creating your own. So, love that. I see a lot of reactions. We are at the end. We actually usually finish somewhere about half the hour, but we're already over that because clearly there's a lot of reaction. People are speaking about their family origin and experiences. Your family, it's your first team, and those experiences become our unconscious power responses. There is also a response that vanity may be the source of power. That's the narcissism that we're talking about. Yes, it can.
Mm.
Just understanding the diversity of options and just engaging with these questions, adding two or three more metaphors to what you define as power immediately, and this is the reminders that we are off the schedule. This is immediately gives you more options. So I appreciate the discussion. It's so lovely to see you. You need to come back and continue this conversation. This is absolutely a big treat. So Jonathan, thank you. Thank you. Any last parting thoughts? What would you like to leave our audience with that is super engaged from all over the world?
Okay, well, I think that become a connoisseur of power. Watch it, learn to taste the different nuances, and like a great meal or a great wine, these things are never flat. It's never one kind of power. There's a lot going on, and I think it becomes easier to bear the painful parts if one can appreciate the full range.
Oh, I love that. Become a connoisseur. Taste power the way you taste good wine, or those of you who don't drink, I don't know, good apples. We are big connoisseurs of apples back in Kazakhstan. So, or horse meat. Taste it the way you taste anything. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining. It's been an honor and pleasure to reconnect. I know this is not the last time, so thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Nadia. A pleasure to meet your followers here.
Absolutely. So, guys, here you have it. Another episode of the Reinvention Show. Let me know in the chat how this one went for you. What are you taking away? What are questions you are leaving here with? I see a lot of you reacting on how this was relevant for you. Enjoyed it. Power is a reality, says Alex Pisak. So nice that we talk about it. Love that. Guys, we are planning to do so much more on power and reinventing our ability to use power as a healthy resource, the oxygen that fuels our bodies and our organizational systems. And for that, I have a big invitation for all of you. You know that every few months, we create this live, free online experience that runs for 5 days called Easy Reinvention Lab. This is a place where we build up our own power, our reinvention muscles, and we also share with each other the pragmatic, dirty, messy part of reinvention while we are reinventing ourselves, our companies, our teams, our products, or our relationship with things such as power, joy, life, and so on. The next lab is in 2022. Our first lab of the new year will start on January 10th. It's always free, it's always live. We hold it online on Zoom, and we provide a really, really well tested workbook for you to work with. About hour each day is all you need. And I love, love, love for you to come and join us in 2022. If you've never been to a lab, register, bring your team or your colleagues or your accountability partners and do the work with us. Walk the journey, make us your accountability community to start the new year right. And if you've been to the lab before, then I invite you to use this lab as your new shower. Remember, I always talk about how reinvention is like taking a shower. If I don't take a shower on a regular basis, I begin to stink. And if you don't reinvent your organizations, your careers, your approaches, your mindsets on a regular basis, we all begin to stink. So, this is a chance for you to take another shower. Grab the registration, share it with your community. Very important. The topic of this particular lab is will be all about how to plan an uncertainty. There are tools for planning uncertainty. There are particular canvases, mechanics, solutions for how to live in uncertain reality and still have discipline and direction that is very adaptive in nature. So grab the registration, bring your team. Don't delay registering because we always push it to the last minute and then time is no longer available. Book it in your calendar now. You literally need about hour 20 minutes a day, but the results across the board have been amazing. So you have the registration. If you're on Facebook, you see it in the comments. If you are on LinkedIn, you also see it in the comments. I love to see that you are seeing more insights on power from today conversation, full range, power balance, lessens the pain. I love that. I love that. So absolutely love your reactions. Super happy to see that this was relevant for you and it helped you and it took you to the next level. The next episode is, as always, next Thursday, 11 a.m. US Eastern. I'll see you at the next Reinvention show. Register for the lab, and we will make sure to start a new year with a lot of healthy, very juicy, and very joyous power. See you soon. Thank you so much for joining. And again, big thank you to Jonathan for taking the time. Bye, everyone.